Imagine this. A pretty standard assignment, U.S. Empley, London. Seems routine, right? But then suddenly, an analyst gets pulled right into the middle of, well, a potential massive international crisis. We're talking the Pope, the KGB.
High stakes, definitely.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack that. We've got some really interesting sources that give us a window into that Cold War intelligence world.
Right, the sort of shadow play between the CIA, MI6, the KGB.
And this specific chilling plot against Pope John Paul II. We'll be looking a lot at Tom Clancy's Red Rabbit. It's fictional, sure, but it gives such a detailed feel for the time, the tensions.
It really captures that atmosphere.
And speaking of, getting different perspectives and analyses, we should mention Mindful Moments.
Oh, yeah.
It's a YouTube channel, uses AI for book analysis. It's great for encouraging that kind of reflection, critical thinking. Kind of like what we try to do here.
Sounds like a good fit for anyone listening to us.
Totally. So our mission today, really get a handle on how serious this whole situation was seen by the agencies, who the key people were, and how they first started figuring out something huge, potentially world-changing, was going down.
Okay, so where do we start? The people, the place.
Yeah, let's set the scene. Early 80s Moscow is the backdrop for a lot of this.
And you get your key players emerging. There's Jack Ryan, CIA analyst, but he starts off in London.
Right. And then in Moscow itself, you've got Ed Foley, the station chief for the CIA, and his wife, Mary Pat.
Who's also agency, importantly.
Crucially, yes. And on the British side, Simon Harding from MI6.
And Moscow. It's painted as, life goes on, but always with the KGB watching. That constant surveillance, even filtering into embassy life.
Yeah, the source mentions things like Ed Foley trying to enjoy ice hockey, but you feel that underlying tension. It's not just background noise.
No, it's pervasive.
But okay, beyond the atmosphere, how do we first get hints that something specific is wrong? It's not just general Cold War paranoia.
Well, you get these early signals. Judge Moore, the DCI back in Langley, he seems worried about Ryan's London assignment.
Which seems odd, right? London's usually considered a pretty safe post.
Exactly. And he mentions Basil Charleston, that's the head of SIS, MI6 being involved. That raises eyebrows.
Yeah.
Why is the head of British intelligence interested in a seemingly junior analyst's posting?
And then you have Bob Ritter's attitude.
Yeah. Ritter. Yeah, his skepticism towards the DI analysts, the Directorate of Intelligence, the analysis side of the house.
It hints at internal CIA politics, maybe? Different factions, ways of thinking?
Could be. Rivalries, perhaps.
Huh.
But what really flags this specific issue is this letter, a potentially explosive letter from the Pope sent to Warsaw.
Poland, right in the heart of the Soviet sphere of influence.
And suddenly, intelligence agencies are very interested in how the Soviets are reacting to this letter. It really underscores the Pope's influence. Even then, he wasn't just a religious figure.
He was a political force, especially concerning Poland.
Undeniably.
Okay, so the letter is out there. Moscow's potentially reacting. Then Simon Harding, the MI6 guy, starts talking potential danger.
Yes, Harding explicitly voices concern for the Pope's safety. And he doesn't just speculate vaguely, he brings up the KGB.
Does he connect it to past actions?
He does. He references Stalin, Stalin's approach to problems, basically, eliminate them. It's a pretty chilling comparison, suggesting this isn't outside the realm of possibility for the Soviets.
So it's grounded in historical precedent, not just fear.
Precisely. And this lines up with shifts happening inside the Kremlin, according to the source material.
Like what?
Well, there's mention of Mikhail Suslov, the old ideologue, being ill, maybe fading.
Okay.
And Yuri Andropov, the head of the KGB, is on the rise. His influence in the Politburo is growing.
And Andropov becoming more powerful could mean?
A harder line, potentially. Less tolerance for dissent or perceived threats. And the source even gives us glimpses into Andropov's thinking.
Really? What's he thinking?
He's uneasy. He sees the Pope as this single individual who could cause massive disruption for the whole Soviet system, a unique kind of threat.
So it's not just the letter, it's the man himself, his influence, the potential for him to inspire resistance, especially in Poland.
Exactly. That seems to be the core of Andropov's concern. It's ideological, it's strategic, it's a major headache for Moscow.
Okay, so we've got the context, the rising tension, the key figures worrying. How does it move from concern and suspicion to something more concrete? How do they know there's a plot?
The turning point comes via someone inside the KGB itself, an officer named Oleg Zaitsev.
A defector, or potential defector.
He intercepts messages, actual communications indicating that Andropov wants the Pope assassinated. It's not ambiguous, it's an order.
Wow. Okay, so Zaitsev sees this order.
Yeah.
What does he do? What's his reaction?
That's one of the most compelling parts. He's deeply conflicted, morally torn apart by this.
I mean, you would have to be assassinating the Pope.
Right. And the source even describes him having this nightmare visualizing the assassination attempt. It really shows the human cost, the internal struggle, even within the KGB structure.
That internal conflict makes him relatable, even though he's KGB. And does he learn specifics about the plan?
Yes. The details emerge, apparently discussed at a Politburo meeting. It's chillingly practical.
Like how?
They plan to use a Bulgarian asset as the actual shooter.
Okay, plausible deniability baked in.
Exactly. The attack is set for St. Peter's Square during one of the Pope's public appearances. Maximum visibility.
And then
There's a second layer. Another operative is tasked to kill the first shooter immediately after the act.
clean up the loose end. Ensure the trail goes cold.
Utterly ruthless.
Right.
And they have a timeline. They estimate the whole operation could be set up and executed in about 4 to 6 weeks.
So the clock is ticking. Urgency is paramount now for the West.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once Zaitsev's information starts to filter out, the intelligence agencies have to react. And fast.
This is where the CIA and MI6 really start talking, coordinating.
Yes. The discussions kick into high gear. Basil Charleston, Simon Harding at MI6, Judge Moore, and others at CIA, they understand the gravity.
And how do they decide to proceed? It's incredibly sensitive information.
Well, they decide to bring Jack Ryan into it more directly.
Why him? He's still relatively junior, right, in London.
That's partly the point. His analytical skills are valued, but he's also got a lower profile than, say, sending a senior operations officer. Less likely to tip off the KGB immediately.
Makes sense. Keep it contained initially.
And this leads to Operation Beatrix. That's the code name for the plan to get Zaitsev, the KGB source, and his family out.
Right. Extracting the source becomes critical.
Absolutely. Because he's not just confirming the plot, he's the key to potentially stopping it and maybe providing other valuable intelligence.
And Mary Pat Foley, Ed Foley's wife in Moscow, she plays a direct role in this.
A crucial one. She's the one tasked with making the incredibly risky contact with Zaitsev inside Moscow.
What made her suitable for that, specifically?
Her background, definitely. Solid operational training, fluent Russian speaker. She could blend in, handle the pressure.
And Zaitsev himself, why does he decide to take this monumental risk? It's not just the moral objection.
The moral objection to the assassination seems primary, the driving force. But yes, there's also the desire for a different life for his family, for his daughter, away from the Soviet system.
So it's a mix of conscience and, well, hope for the future.
Seems that way. And he's very clear he wants permanent relocation, asylum for his entire family. He's burning all his bridges.
Understandable. The risk is immense. Okay, as we're getting deeper into this web of plans, counterplans, defections, it really makes you appreciate resources that help unpack complex stuff, like mindful moments we mentioned, or, discussions like ours, trying to piece together these intricate situations.
Yeah, the layers here are incredible. You have the assassination plot, the defection, the extraction, all happening under intense pressure.
So tell us about the extraction plan itself, Operation Beatrix. How's it supposed to work?
It's routed through Budapest, Hungary. Seems they felt it was slightly less intensely watched than, say, West Berlin.
Okay, a slightly softer entry point to the West.
Potentially. An SIS operative, Andy Hudson, is involved on the ground there working with some Hungarian contacts. It's complex, involves timing, clandestine meetings, the whole 9 yards of spycraft.
And while this extraction is being planned and hopefully executed, what's happening with the threat itself? What's Ryan doing?
Ryan gets sent to Rome. His job is basically to be on the ground, use his analytical skills to try and anticipate how the attack might happen, and work with the local assets, presumably Italian intelligence and MI6, to prevent it.
So he's moving from analysis in London to direct counterterrorism involvement in Rome. That's a big jump.
Huge jump. And things intensify when they identify a likely candidate for the second operative, the cleanup man, a professional assassin known as Strokov.
So they have a name, maybe a face. That makes the threat much more tangible.
Much more. Now Ryan and the MI6 team in Rome are actively working security in St. Peter's Square during the Pope's appearances, looking for known threats, looking for Strokov, looking for the primary shooter.
This is the climax, isn't it? The moment of truth.
It is. The source describes Ryan essentially confronting Strokov in the square. There's a tense encounter, and Ryan manages to apprehend him.
Preventing the assassination, or at least preventing the cleanup and potentially disrupting the whole plan.
By taking out Strokov, he effectively neutralizes a key part of the operation, likely causing enough chaos or uncertainty to prevent the primary shooter from acting, Or maybe they apprehend him too. The source focuses on the Strokoff confrontation as the critical intervention.
Okay, so the immediate crisis in St. Peter's Square is averted, thanks to Ryan and the team. What happens next? Zaitsev.
Zaitsev and his family are successfully extracted via Budapest. Operation Beatrix works.
That must have been incredibly tense.
No doubt. And once he's safely in the West, the debriefing starts. And it's huge.
What kind of intel does he provide, beyond the Pope plot?
Well, confirming the plot details is massive in itself. But he also provides critical information about compromised communication systems, potentially revealing how the Soviets might be reading Western traffic or identifying moles. A real intelligence coup.
So his defection pays off significantly for the CIA and MI6.
Immensely. But it also leaves them with this chilling realization about the Soviets.
What realization?
Just how desperate the Kremlin leadership must have been to even consider something like assassinating the Pope. It points to a deep sense of insecurity or crisis within their system.
Which ties into Ryan's later analysis, right?
Exactly. Ryan starts digging into the why. And his analysis, as presented in the source, suggests the Soviet economy was in far worse shape than most Western intelligence estimated at the time.
So the theory is they were flailing.
Right.
That this extreme action was born out of a sense of weakness, not strength.
That's the implication. That the internal pressures, particularly economically, were pushing them towards incredibly risky, almost reckless actions on the world stage. A fascinating perspective.
Wow. Okay, so looking back at everything we've unpacked today, it really shows a moment where history could have gone very differently.
Absolutely. This intersection of ideology, intelligence work, individual conscience, it nearly led to an act that would have had unbelievable repercussions.
And it highlights the dedication, maybe even heroism, of people within the agencies, but also the immense courage of someone like Zaitsev.
His choice was pivotal, risking everything based on moral conviction.
It definitely underscores the complexity of that whole world, doesn't it? The constant guessing, the threat of deception, but also the need for clear, critical thinking to make sense of it all.
You really see the value of good analysis under pressure.
We really hope listening to this gives you more to think about regarding that whole period. You know, the real events that likely inspired Clancy, the motivations driving people on all sides, the sheer pressure of the Cold War.
It's a deep rabbit hole, pardon the pun.
Right. So if you found this valuable, please do subscribe so you don't miss future discussions. Share it with anyone else who finds this stuff as fascinating as we do.
And if you're able, there might be a link in the description to support the show.
Most importantly, though, keep thinking critically. Question the narratives, look deeper. Thanks for joining us.